So I am a citizen of India, a citizen of Dehradun city also, born and brought up here in the state of Uttarakhand. And I did my schooling from Dehradun. After that, I appeared for the common law admission test. Uh, After that, I was at National Law University, Jodhpur from 2011 to 2016. Post my time at NLU Jodhpur, I progressed to the University of Oxford for my Bachelor of Civil Law course, which is their taught postgraduate program in law, which is the journey I think we're going to talk about today. And I spent around a little more than a year in Oxford. After that, I came back and I have been litigating at the High Court of Uttarakhand in Nainital. So yes, that is in brief about me, Sammanika. Over to you.
Okay, Abhijay. So in the last session, we discussed about your journey at National Law University, Jodhpur, and how you spent your 5 years. In today's session, we want to, like most of our participants, want to know about your journey to Oxford. So would you like to give your insights on that?
Sure. So, Samanika, I think that's a very broad question. If I can first begin with what is a journey into a postgraduate course, as in how do we undertake that journey, or how do we make that call, whether we want to do a master's, whether we want to do a postgraduate course in something or not. See how it always starts is that you need to understand if you are progressing, say from a BA LLB or an undergraduate course in law to a postgraduate course in law, the first question you should be asking yourself is that are you interested in something like this? Uh, do you have an academic interest into a particular area of law which you would want to research further, which you would want to invest your time, money, or whatever kinds of resources into? So, first and foremost is whether you have an academic interest in a particular field of law. Secondly, in today's day and age, you don't need to be a quote unquote domain expert. Even if you have a BA LLB or a BB LLB or a BSc LLB degree as your undergraduate degree, you can go ahead and do a postgraduate course in public policy or something in a postgraduate course in public policy or something in business administration or environmental change, things which you could be interested about if you look up certain fields and you find some similarities between what you want to do and what some of these premier universities are offering. So once you've taken that decision that you have an academic interest into a particular field, whichever it might have been, then you take that decision to apply for a master's course. Now, once we decide that we want something, then we look at all the options before us. Now, the one question which I have often been asked is that many people don't apply to these Ivy League universities or to some of the premier universities thinking that, oh, this is out of my league. I should not be thinking about it. I would strongly advise against that notion. Now, of course, there are certain academic and co-curricular and uh, all kinds of benchmarks that are set by these universities for admissions, but you must go through them yourself. That means if you want to look up a particular university, you should be Googling it up, you should go to that university website, you should be reading up about it, and then you should take your decision instead of just hearsay that, oh, don't even apply to that university because you're not going to get it. So these are some of the very basic things that we should be doing before we look at applying for a master's course at any place. And there are certain very basic things that are required for all such applications. The most important thing which comes up is a personal statement or a statement of purpose. Now the two are slightly different, so it depends from country to country, college to college, with regard to what is it that they want. They want your personal statement or they want a statement of purpose. Then there is your curriculum vitae, the CV. Then you have an academic work sample that you have to show them, letters of recommendation. So if we were to come to each of them one by one, with regard to the personal statement, now please understand this one thing about this entire session. There is no particular right or wrong or correct or false in any approach to a personal statement. I have read all kinds of personal statements which are very personal. Some of them are very passionate. Some of them are very, um, what should I say, struggling to describe themselves. So, the one thing I would advise all students who would be writing these personal statements is that try not to hide some of the very bright aspects of your personality. What happens is that when we write the personal statement, especially when we write the first few drafts of it, we tend to think that, oh, this is sounding boastful, so we should not be boasting about ourselves. Now, that is something which can be fatal, because ultimately your personal statement is your chance to sell yourself to that particular university, to compel the university to look at that statement and to be like, oh, I wish our word limit was more. I wish I could have interacted with this person, or this person deserves this institution. So these are my 2 cents about it, as I've already added that big disclaimer that there is no a particular way of writing a personal statement. What you should be doing is jotting down in brief notes what are some of the strongest aspects of your profile and weaving them into a very compelling story. Something like what we call an elevator pitch. You're walking with an investor and he walks into an elevator, and he will be with you only in the elevator, and he walks out when he reaches his destination floor. So a personal statement is one that has to make a very compelling case of yourself, and you've got to weave it up very well. So I'll tell you what will sound boastful. If you look at the personal statement as a desperate chance, friends, we all watch television, we all watch YouTube, right? All these advertisements keep coming up. Now imagine if all of them kept coming up and saying, please buy our product, please, we beg of you, we are folding our hands and are asking you to buy our product. Now that is something which will be very repulsive to the viewer, right? And we wouldn't want to watch something like that. Though ultimately all these companies and all these products and services are expecting buyers, are expecting people to really take them. So even though the end object is that your product is sold, but the way of doing it really makes a very big difference. So your personal statement shouldn't be a prayer to the university that so and so is a great university and wow, and I would love to join you, not something on those lines. But it has to be a compelling case about you, and there has to be some awareness about the particular personal statement or the particular scholarship or the particular university you are applying to. I will be coming to scholarships later. I'm just talking about the personal statement in general right now. So apart from describing your own story and linking it through a matching the columns exercise with how you fit the eligibility criteria of that university or college, or how you add value to that institution, you should also in subtle ways show awareness about the fact that this is, say, an Oxford application and not a Harvard application. Now how could that come? That could come if you were to write in your personal statement towards your concluding paragraph somewhere that uh, an old institution like Oxford, or a particular college, or talk about a particular faculty of that university whose writings you would have read, or say the Oxford Human Rights Hub, which is their very well-known blog, which gives a platform to student writers to have a platform of that kind. So these are some of the basic things you should keep in mind for the personal statement. You have to weave different threads of your own profile together, connect it with eligibility, and show that you are aware that this is your personal statement for a particular objective, be it a particular scholarship or a particular college or university. With regard to your CV, it is very important that we are short. It is very important that our CVs don't use adjectives for ourselves. At times you will be like, oh, of course, I don't do that in my CV. But please read them again with a fine comb. And you might find that you might have been using some of these adjectives for yourself. So try to remove all of these things. Try to be precise. Try to always date a particular thing. If you say you won this particular thing, so apart from where did you win it, it should also include when did you win it. It should not be more than 2 pages. Yes, so this is largely about the CV. With regard to your academic work sample, please ensure that your academic work is of good standards, in the sense that you have your own view somewhere in that academic work. It is very important to have your own view. I have had some great examples while I was at Oxford, when I actually was participating in seminars and tutorials, and I used to see people who were very well researched, but just because they did not write their own view into their research, they were marked very low in such universities. These universities encourage you to have your own view. So it's very important that the academic work sample you send should have your own view somewhere over there, a reasoned view, of course, that goes without saying. With regard to the reference letters and all of these things, usually there are two broad categories of referees, especially at Oxford. One is an academic referee, and the other is a character referee. Now, what now the pet question which haunts all applicants is that, should we go for a big name to be our referee? Will that make a bigger difference? See, what they look forward to is what they write for you. So, of course, big names would make some difference. But if the big name is writing just another letter and it is impersonal, and believe me when I say this, these are people who have been evaluating thousands of applications every year, and they can make out what is original and what is not. So, it really makes a big difference if you can uh, get someone who actually knows you to write a strong reference letter. For example, in my case, uh, the vice chancellor of my university at National Law University Jodhpur taught us some courses on family law and also on property law. I had the opportunity to work with her to update one of her books on property law. So I asked her to be one of my referees. The other referee was my administrative law teacher, because I was very fond of administrative law. I was actively using administrative law for my social activist group in Dehradun city. So I asked him to be the second of my referees. And then I asked my school principal to be one of my referees. So I think this was my combination of my three referees. So pick people who can really vouch for you. Now, how often do they get in touch with them is something which is up for debate, but they can. And believe me when I say this, they want to be very sure before they offer anybody a seat at any such university. So put your best foot forward. I think that is something for the starting context, Sammanika. If you can ask a specific question, I can streamline my answer that way.
That was a very detailed answer, Abhijay. Even I got to learn so much from it. Before we proceed further, I would just like to tell our participants one thing. They were very cautious about the privacy issues. So we have changed the settings, and now you will not be able to unmute yourself. So please raise your hand if you want to ask anything. We have disabled the chat option as well, so that nobody is disturbing the other person on the chat. So whenever you have any query, just raise your hand, and in the course of the discussion, we will be asking the questions. So Abhijay, you answered my query from a general perspective. Now, from your point of view, when did your journey for Oxford begin, and how did you plan it?
See, to give you a very frank and honest answer, I was in the fourth year of my law school when I found out that I was not cut out for the corporate world, and I did not want to make a career in a law firm or in a corporate job. So that is why I became very scared, and I started thinking, then what is it that I'm going to do after my law school? And I found out that constitutional law and administrative law, these were two fields of law I was very, very interested in. So I started looking up at options and at academic writings on these two subjects. And I used to come across Professor Sandra Fredman's works on comparative constitutional law and human rights and equality law very often. So I started reading more and more of her work, and I was very influenced by the way she wrote. And that is what prompted my effort to apply for the University of Oxford, because she was going to teach us two subjects which were going to be comparative human rights and comparative equality law. So that was the reason I chose to go to Oxford. So again, it was two way. I first found out that I was not like by a process of elimination, I found out that I was not going to go for a particular option. So I started looking at what is it that I am interested in, and I realized I'm interested in constitutional law and administrative law, and that is what prompted my application to Oxford. If I could share with you that not all master's courses are the same. So a lot of questions that I actually had received before this session were around the fact that what is a master's degree like? What did you specialize in, for example? So the BCL program, the Bachelor of Civil Law program, now it is called the Bachelor of Civil Law. The total name is a misnomer. So this is one big problem with UK institutions. They are obsessed with history and tradition. So since the BCL is the oldest postgraduate program in law, they have not changed the word bachelor and they still use the word civil law, even though BCL by itself is a degree which gives you the option of choosing your courses from a total of 40 courses. So the BCL by itself offers 40 courses. Now, how can you know about this? You can go to their website, you can just Google BCL courses and you will get all 40 of them. Students are expected to choose 4 out of these 40 courses. So my choice, and you are spoiled for choices. So I remember in the first week when we actually went to Oxford, it was like a gluttony kind of an experience. You are getting the best of food you would want to have. You're attending different classes, and all of them are absolutely amazing. This is the one thing, academics and intellectual stimulation that comes from a master's degree from anywhere else. When people ask you, that, oh, why are you going there? What will it help you for? And it has no material benefit. So forget everything. The intellectual stimulation something like that offers you is worth it. So I remember, for example, we had this one class where a particular professor explained her point of view on a particular topic, and we were all spellbound by that point of view. And then she's sitting with another very eminent professor on the same subject who speaks just after her, bashes her point of view completely, says the complete opposite, and now we are spellbound by what that professor is saying. And when the class ends, we are looking at each other, scratching our heads, thinking who is right and who is wrong, and what is wrong with life. And then they were disagreeing very passionately, and then they both get up and they shake their hands and they go out and they drink coffee together or beer together or whatever they would want to drink. So these are some, like, that experience by itself is just a small example of how the entire journey was of academic and intellectual stimulation. So I was thinking that this is something I would want to do, even if it came with no other benefit. And I would want to add over here that is wrong to say that a master's degree doesn't come with any other benefit. I know there are people who've said that they went for a master's abroad, and when they came back, say, into litigation, and no judge or nobody asked them where they had done their master's from. I fundamentally disagree with it because I have had a very different experience. Uh, then they say that how will you use your master's education? See, that choice is on you. If you get a particular case, especially broad areas like administrative law, constitutional law, the doctrine of stare decisis essentially means it is for you to pick what kind of precedents you want to cite. And I have been doing that at a relatively small high court in Uttarakhand, and that has been giving me results, like actual results. And apart from, I've already shared with you these material benefits, a master's degree is one which is really something which is worth it for the intellectual stimulation. And that is why intellectual stimulation and academic interest has to be the starting point for you to decide whether you want to do a master's course, as it was for me.
Before you share your experience of Uttarakhand High Court, how you're utilizing your knowledge at Oxford, the learnings from Oxford at Uttarakhand High Court, I would want you to keep it for the end. And there are 5 hands which have been raised. So Shreya, I'm unmuting yourself. Please ask your question.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask regarding the statement of purpose or personal statement. Do they focus on what we are trying to talk, like explain about ourselves, or like do they focus on the grammatical aspect more, or on how we express ourselves, or how we write up?
Okay. Sammanika, what I suggest is if there are 5 hands up, I suggest you can take all of them together. I am making short notes and I will answer all of them. Will
All
that be
right.
good?
Okay. Unmuting Megha. Meha. Meha, you can go ahead. I've unmuted you. You don't have to unmute yourself. That way you'll mute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I had a question about the academic work sample. Do all universities require you to write this, or is it like specific to Oxford? And another question I had was, you mentioned about your CV. So students in their fourth year have already worked in a certain direction and built their CV in a certain direction. But what are some things that you recommend should be a part of a CV that is applying to an LLM program at Oxford or another prestigious university? That's it. Those were my two questions. Thank you.
Okay. Aniket, I'm unmuting yourself.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, ma'am, so I wanted to know, like you told regarding the academic publications and the criteria. So basically, I wanted to know, like, what is the basic insight which the Oxford universities or other foreign universities look like? You told that we have to give our input. Apart from that, I also wanted to know whether we have to focus much on any particular area or aspect that they much ponder upon to when they sort the candidates. And apart from that, also, so how much of academic excellence in the college also counts in these admissions?
All right.
That's a question.
Shashwati?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you so much. So my question is, when we talk about academic publications, uh, in your opinion, would you think that publishing any kind of content in LinkedIn, wherein you kind of share your views, they work as I mean, they qualify to be an academic work, or in your opinion, what are the other examples? Like, sure, there are journals, but I mean, what's your take on? I mean, if someone was to intelligently put their LinkedIn publications as saying that, okay, fine, this is my views, even though it's not in a journal, it's still out in the public, so more people can read. But I somehow feel that there is a lack of acceptance in the general academic world on posts or articles which are published in LinkedIn. So yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on this. Thank you.
One last question. Kavita, I'm unmuting you.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Good morning. I have two particular questions, sir. Firstly, considering the whole pandemic situation, it's quite possible that students can defer their admissions to next year. So I'm a student who's applying for 2021 LLM. How could that impact me? Secondly, the second question is, except Oxford University, there's no other college in the world that asks you to write 300 words statement of purpose. So could you please, share your insights on that, because I am really baffled. I don't know what to write in 300 words. So yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, Abhijay, you can answer these questions
Yes.
first.
Okay. So I remember the first question was about the statement of purpose, and if they specifically focus on grammar and other things. See, ultimately, please understand things from the perspective of the evaluator. The evaluator is someone who is looking at several thousands of words from several thousands of people, and therefore he is not someone who's going to be an actual grammar Nazi. But please also understand that if his eye falls on those details, he would not want to proceed further even with the reading of the SOP. Now, why do I say that? Does that mean that grammar trumps substance? No. But you need to understand, these universities uh, open up for admission sometime in September, and their applications conclude by January. So they give people ample time to make thorough applications. And if in so much time they are actually making grammar errors in those very few hundred words which they are going to submit for evaluation, that does not reflect well on the seriousness with which they would have made that application. So maybe if it's a comma or a full stop here or there, or a capital letter here or there, that may be ignored. But of course, you should try not to make such mistakes. So that is with regard to whether they focus on grammar aspects, etc. Generally, with regard to statement of purpose, and if I could take up Kavita's last question also with regard to the 300 words and how brutal it is that it is so less, I very much agree with it. But uh, when you start writing, and if you are properly writing your personal statement, if you are trying to explain how things are with your application and why is it that you're applying and how you are the most eligible person which you know, etc., if you will realize that even say 1,000 words would fall short. So I remember my first draft went into, it was around 2,300 words. My first draft went that much. And when I had to make it 1,000, that in itself was a very difficult exercise. I had to really cut it short, and I had to really work very hard to make it 1,000 words. Now once you do that, and I remember how it works with regard to the Oxford application process, at least, is that everybody first applies for the Rhodes Scholarship. It is the Rhodes Scholarship which gives you the 1,000-word SOP, and then you have the 6 referees, etc. So the Rhodes application process is by itself so intensive that it 80% prepares you for the Oxford application process. And once you've done 1,000, I know 300, when you will be undertaking that journey, you will feel like you're cutting off your limbs as you walk forward, but you have to. That is what you have to do, and you will manage to do that, like everybody does. You cut out a lot of these details. It becomes possible. Once you reach 1,000, then you will reach 500, and then you will reach 300. You will do that. It will just come to you. There's no way of saying, because it will be dishonest of me to say write a 300-word SOP. Like, first write your heart out, and then go into that journey of making the diamond out of the raw material. With regard to Meha's question on the academic work sample, and if the CV is already in a certain direction already, see, what I would suggest is, a lot of people fake their credentials. A lot of people make a very strong effort to be what they are not while making an application to one of these universities. And since these universities are looking at many applications day in and day out, they have a knack of even getting to know. So if your CV is in a certain direction already, say if in your 4th year or in your 5th year, try to see the direction, because ultimately that direction is not an unconscious choice. It would be coming from a conscious choice. You chose to prioritize some areas of law. Now, if you've already done that and you want to do your master's in that area of law, nothing like it. So say if it's corporate laws, you want to do a master's in corporate law, then you should be putting forward your best efforts in your final year for, say, that one publication which can really help you sail through the admission process to Oxford. Now, if I were to give you an example about how we prepare our CVs for such admission processes, what matters most is quality, and what matters least is quantity. Now, we look at people who are busy becoming like a printing press. They are publishing 20, 25 articles, and they're claiming that they have knowledge of law all around various spheres of law, when that is exactly what is the most ill-suited for a good master's degree, which is looking for some spark or some credentials in the specific areas of law which you want to choose for your higher education. So it doesn't matter if you've made 10 publications or 15 publications. What matters is the 2 or 3 publications you've made in your 5 years. Where were they published, and what did you write in those publications? Now that makes a world of difference. And small knacks and tricks, like you can the Oxford Human Rights Hub, I've already spoken about it. They have some of their own blogs going around. You can start sending some short pieces to these portals and to these websites, and they can, of course, be publishing it, and they can make it easy for you. Another question was on what is an academic publication. I think it was Shashwati's question on an example of academic writing and whether LinkedIn writing and all counts. What I would suggest is that See, an academic publication has to be something which is academic fundamentally. It does not mean that academic writing cannot happen on, say, a social media platform. It can, but it helps if your academic writing was not only like it really helps if it was not only in a journal, but it was probably in a conference. It was an idea that you not only wrote about, but you presented and you opened yourself to questions. So academic learning is about a very thorough process of question and answer. So it makes a difference if your academic writing is something which was published at a journal or at a platform which values hard work and it is in their knowledge. So if you can crack a couple of those difficult publications, if you can dig deep and do those make those publications possible, it is something which is good. Another example of academic writing, or I would not say academic writing, but I would say, it really helps your co-curricular profile, is if you write for a newspaper with some viewership. They might not know the names of all newspapers, but if you write, in your 4th year and in your 5th year, you can always just pick up some of your local newspapers and start writing columns there. You can then write in your CV that you're a columnist with this newspaper, and you would by the time you're making that application have 15 to 20 columns to show that you are a columnist. So these are some of the things that a feather here and there which can help your application process. But of course, academic writing is serious business which will require, say, some kind of, which it helps if you have say a conference exposure or something on those lines. Another question was on academic standards and what is it that is required. See, of course, fundamentally all postgraduate programs are academic journeys. You undertake them if you have an interest, an academic interest in a particular field. It is then that you undertake these journeys. So please be sure of that academic interest, and therefore these universities do have some criteria. They look favorably at those who are ranked, say, in the top 3, top 5, top 10. But that does not mean that you're ranked 15, so that means everything is over for you. Miracles do happen, and if you have a strong profile, if you have something interesting to talk about, I have seen individuals who've broken those glass ceilings and have gotten to some of these universities and have actually done very well. So I would always encourage you to apply if you think you can make that application, because what such an application process does is it also becomes a very good exercise in self-exploration. So you tend to look at various aspects of your own profile. You actually, writing a statement of purpose can give you a purpose in life. You can start discovering aspects of your profile and a larger goal you were working towards, which becomes very helpful. So I think this was generally about the different questions that were asked. Sammanika?
Okay, unmuting Rajat.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Rajat.
Yes. My question is very pointed. What is the difference between master's program in Oxford versus Harvard A? And what is the age profile of the class, and how do they consider people from a big experience or past work experience, maybe 10-15 years? And have you seen anybody in that? What is the highest age? And third, and how to get the scholarship in those domain? Hope I have cleared my question.
Yes, very much.
Okay. Smita?
Hi, sir.
Hi,
So I have a couple of questions. Firstly, I was wondering whether the letter of recommendation that we're supposed to submit, is it necessary that it has to be an academic reference? Secondly, sir, in a post-COVID world, do you think, since I will be applying for the 2021 session, I was wondering whether it would be good to apply right now, considering the state of the economy and the world that we are going toward, or would it be better to get some work experience for a couple of years, say 2-3 years, and then go for a master's degree? Sir, I would also like to know about the scholarships, and particularly considering your work in the area of environmental law, if you could maybe suggest some courses or some particular college, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, Devansh. Devansh, are you there?
Hello. Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So my question is regarding. So I've heard that people generally opt for some work experience after their undergraduate degree before opting for the postgraduate degree. Is it preferable, or like it does not hold any value, or like it's based on personal preference?
Okay. Next is Naveen.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Naveen, you are not audible.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Please go ahead. Yes, yes.
So my question is, which CV as a panelist at the Oxford would they prefer? Like a CV which is eccentric in all the fields of law, or a CV which is particularly diverted to a particular field of interest in law, like any of the subjects in law? A centric one or a very specific one? Is my question. Thank you.
Okay. Shabna, next.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hello. Yeah. So this was more of a personal question. I had a query regarding admissions into Oxford. So I'm currently applied for the 2021 application, and then the upcoming year basically. And they've put me on the wait list and have informed me that I'm in the top 20 for BCL as well as MJOR program. So is there anything I can do at this point to improve my chances of getting into Oxford? Thank you.
Okay. Last question, Sharad.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, my question is it really, because today we have all these online resources and tools, so can we do it off campus? What is the scope, and is it replaceable? The on campus experience can be replicated by this off campus things? What do you think on that? Thank you.
Okay. Abhijay, you can answer these questions.
Yes, yes. I think some very pertinent ones. I forgot to answer the COVID question in the last round, but I will begin. I think there are three basic issues here. So there are questions on scholarships I will be looking at. There is a big question on age I will be talking about. And I think about the CVs, the kind of CVs, etc. Okay, so first I will deal with age. That's a very good and important question. So the answer is that the average age of my batch, I think, was 29, and the average age of the graduate class generally, which used to see around, was in 30s and in the early 30s, which means that there were, of course, there was a big chunk of students who would come to the postgraduate course immediately after their undergraduate program, but there was also a very big chunk of students who came back after work experience or during work experience. So it is not as if I did, like, whether I saw someone. I in fact made some very good friends with a fellow student who was a father of three, who was someone who had been a sheriff in his county, and he was now doing his postgraduate course in law again. Then there were people who were teachers in various parts of the world. There were people who were law practitioners. So the class size is very mixed, and that is one of the very beautiful things about a graduate program. So that is with regard to age. So with regard to that question on whether you should have work experience before you apply or whether you should not, see, there is no right answer or there is no one answer to this question, but I would still say that it really helps if you have work experience. See, I went immediately after my undergraduate program and I absolutely loved things. But it isn't as if I feel that I would have been better if I had gone, say, at this point in time, because there are different kinds of careers which permit you to go, and then there are those which cannot allow you to go. For example, a litigation practice. If you've put in 2, 3, 4 years of hard work and you've finally started, your plane has finally started running for takeoff, then at that point in time you decide, oh, I'm actually going to go for a master's degree. It becomes difficult. It can also happen in the corporate field when you're looking for a particular kind of promotion, and when you get that opportunity you are backing away from it, so it becomes difficult. However, if you have some work experience, I feel those who had work experience were able to add with greater maturity to classroom discussions, and they were very good even academically at Oxford. But that is not to say as if you cannot apply after your undergraduate degree. Like, I do not regret my decision of having applied immediately after my undergraduate degree, because ultimately there are people who are senior to you in terms of age. Their perspectives are shared in the class, and then there are people who are in the student life bracket. Their perspectives are also shared in the class, and they both interact, and it comes up with good results. So all kinds of age groups can apply. There is no clear answer with regard to whether you should have work experience or you shouldn't have work experience before you apply, but both approaches work. And so it's never too late or it's never too early for making that application. If you are interested, if you have an academic interest somewhere in your heart, you are eligible to apply. With regard to that personal question on being in the wait list, see, it really makes a difference if you are communicating with the admissions department. So I'm sure there would be some particular individual who would have written that email to you, would have informed you that you're in the top 20 in the wait list. As eager as you would be to join the institution is also eager to keep those people admitted who would add value to the institution. So it's from both sides, but what I would urge you to do is maybe drop them, say, one email every week. Try to be in a conversation with them, ask them this question, try to continue showing your interest in joining the institution in a subtle way. Don't be too impository, but I would encourage you to drop, say, an email every week to just check up on them, and that is most you can do. With regard to an academic exercise or anything on those lines, I'm afraid no, that cannot be done at this stage, but you can stay in touch with them, and that can be helpful. With regard to whether an academic reference is necessary, I would say yes, because ultimately a postgraduate course is an academic course, and therefore I would say an academic reference is necessary. And there is a lot of scope of environmental law. Environmental law has really come up as a very strong field, which has a lot of flurry of academic activity and papers. So yes, there is a lot of scope of environmental law. I was particularly unfortunate because the very year I went for my master's degree, I wanted to really take up environmental law, but the subject faculty was on sabbatical for that year at Oxford. But I would definitely recommend people to go to the university and pursue environmental law. I have read some of their course materials, and that's absolutely great. Post-COVID, now please understand this. We are all in a very uncertain world, and it is very difficult to predict how this is going to unfold here on. However, let it not divert you from your individual career pursuits. If anything bad were to happen globally, it will invariably impact you. But if things start going uphill and you become too relaxed or too complacent or too worried, then please realize this, that you might be the only losers. So try not to land yourself in that position. Try not to be too worried with these global headwinds. Make your applications, I don't think these institutions will shut down if this persists, even if it persists or gets worse. I think, as somebody else had also asked about, an off-campus online system may be devised. Of course, an online system can nowhere come close to the actual experience of a classroom at one of these universities, the library they have, and um, especially with regard to Oxford, the ancient history, the way you feel at one with so many things. So that doesn't come close, but of course, if things come, if push comes to shove, that is what will happen. And it will still be worth it. It will still be an Oxford class, so it will be worth it. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. And I suggest, COVID or no COVID, you should be making your efforts and your applications with utmost seriousness. With regard to the question on CV and whether they look at a tilt in your CV, see, they will be sniffing your CV to find your area of interest. Say, I talk in my CV, I talk in my personal statement about how I want to change environmental law and I wanted to really become all powerful and conservation to be more important than development, etc., etc. And in my CV, I am working only in the fossil fuel industry, or if I am not at all doing anything on environmental law, they will certainly not call me, because even if I would be honest with my heart on my pursuits for environmental law and my push to change things in my CV, in my actual life work, I would not have done that. So therefore, it is important for the CV to have some kind of synchronization with your personal statement. And so they do look for an inclination, but that doesn't mean eccentric CVs don't get in. There are different kinds of CVs, but of course, see, if you're all over the place and if there is no link between your personal statement and with your CV, you're in a problem, because there should be some link, some remote link at least, between your personal statement and your CV. Now, this leaves me with the larger question on scholarships, and I think that will require some time. So I should do
That's
that. A lot of
exactly.
you.
Even I wanted you to. Yes, because Abhijay, on our live YouTube session also, we are getting queries regarding scholarship discussion.
Okay, now let me delve straight into scholarships.
Okay.
So there are some conventional staple scholarships for a degree at the University of Oxford: the Rhodes Trust Scholarship, the Commonwealth Scholarship, the Chevening Scholarship. These three are the most well-known. Then there is an India-specific scholarship by the Inlax Foundation. Then there is the Navrottam Sheikh Saria Scholarship, which is partial. There are several scholarships. See, if I was sitting with a list, I could read it out. But what I can share with you is they are all available online. Like you can Google up scholarships for study at Oxford, or you can go to the university website and open that tab. They have country-specific, course-specific information about scholarships. And I would encourage each of you to go through it, because you never know what clicks for you. And of course, especially the undergraduate students who would be in their 4th and 5th years, the Rhodes Scholarship comes with the most prestige, as we understand, and we all make our best effort forward and we apply for it. Please do that. But I also wish to share with you, there are so many wonderful scholarships which have different attributes. So the Rhodes Scholarship gives you a good stipend. The Commonwealth Scholarship gives you maybe a lesser stipend, but it is what many people call a sarkari format. So they will give you a warm clothes allowance, they will give you this allowance and that allowance, etc., etc. The Chevening Scholarship is very prestigious. It has a big network in London and in other parts of the UK. Different colleges and their alumni keep meeting and interacting with each other. But I would really strongly recommend the particular scholarship that I had got, and I will tell you why. It is called the Louis Dreyfus. It's a long name. The Louis Dreyfus Weidenfeld Hoffmann Trust Scholarship and Leadership Program. So the reason I would strongly recommend all of you to apply for this scholarship is because not only do they have the most generous stipend and general student care for anybody at Oxford, but they also have a leadership program, which is very coveted. So even when you reach Oxford, you already have a family. They give you moral philosophy seminars where you interact with people from different parts of the developing world and even the developed world. It doesn't, you know, stigmatize or patronize countries with regard to their income group. So you have a very diverse set of people, and they train you for leadership. They assign you a mentor who it is all informal. They assign you a mentor to be in touch with you for any queries you would have, and then they even fund your travel to other countries. For example, when I was at Oxford, I undertook a short course on experience called Experiencing China, where we were looking China's the most premier university. You can look it up in Beijing, and it was the Weidenfeld Hoffmann Trust, which was generous enough to fund my participation in that conference in terms of completely looking after the travel cost. To the Houses of Parliament, to the House of Lords, etc. They then also took us to a place called Cumberland Lodge, where we were housed for a few days, and we were exposed to specific training on networking. That was something very helpful, where they taught us some of these very basic things, like even how to properly shake hands, how to join a social conversation. Now imagine, you would not imagine learning these things in a postgraduate degree level, but that is why, like, these were some snippets from my experience with the Louis Dreyfus Weidenfeld Hoffmann Trust Scholarship and Leadership Program, and therefore I would certainly recommend it. Now, the reason this is not so well known as, say, some of the other scholarships I spoke about was because these scholarships, like, we look at scholarships only with prestige, and prestige comes only with a lot of time. So like Rhodes and Commonwealth, they're almost centuries old probably, but say something like the scholarship I got is fairly new, which gives you a chance of being, you know, one of the good ambassadors of a scholarship like this. Now, how do you apply for them? Having described what this scholarship is about and some of the other scholarships, you can go to the website and see what are the various scholarship options. See, most scholarships would clearly spell out what kind of a candidate they are looking for. And even though it is plain English and you can understand it when you read it once, each of you should read it at least 10 times very thoroughly. You should read all the words and the adjectives and everything they write for in their version of an ideal candidate very thoroughly. And then see what are the sparks in your CV or in you which can fit to that eligibility criteria. And what I said for your CV with regard to admissions in institutions, I say it even more for scholarship applications. Your scholarship applications should be customized, they should be tailor-made. So I understand if you've already written an SOP for Rhodes, so you've written an SOP for like you have an SOP ready for all your applications, but that does not mean you forget removing Rhodes when you actually, you know, apply, say, for Commonwealth. You've got to tweak it a bit based on the eligibility criteria that has been laid out by the Commonwealth scholarship details. Similarly for Chevening, similarly for others. There are some scholarships like Chevening which would require work experience. So they are, of course, more favorably suited for those with work experience. Then there are some scholarships like INLACs. Everything is very vague. It's up for grabs, which means it's up for grabs. It means you have a damn good chance, just like anybody else. They're talking about you being different and etc. etc. You can actually go up and look up on it. There are some scholarships which are college specific. Now, let me tell you, at least for the University of Oxford, you gain admission to the university. You don't, for the postgraduate courses, you don't gain admission to a college. So it is the university which then allocates a college to you. So you will automatically be considered for some scholarships at the university level. You will also be automatically considered for the scholarships at the college level once you clear the admission process. And that is why it becomes very important to apply for Rhodes first up, because Rhodes is the first application you make. even before applying for Oxford, you apply for Rhodes because their deadline finishes. And of course, if you start clearing the cutoff benchmarks for Rhodes, that does mean that you are invariably going to get admission into Oxford. But whether you get a scholarship becomes a different ball game. So your scholarship applications have to be specifically tailored for the particular scholarship you are applying for, and you need to have a thorough understanding of what is it that they are looking for and how you are helping them satisfy their requirement for a scholarship. And yes, that's largely my answer on the scholarships question.
Abhijay, Ramanuj, our CEO, has a specific query for you. He wants to know, is it easier to get scholarship when you are young, or does the chance of getting a scholarship reduce as you grow older?
See, I would not say that the chance reduces when you grow old. In fact, there are many scholarships which specifically require work experience. And these days, academic education and this field is also becoming a field of breaking the glass ceiling and of all these stereotypes. They welcome people from all age groups with open arms. For example, for the Louis Dreyfus Scholarship, there was a particular scholar from Africa who was around 50, and she was doing work in the field of sanitation. And she was welcomed as warmly as any other scholar. And I can tell you, like, even with regard to my class size and the people who were in class, they were all age groups. So again, there are of course some scholarships which you may not be able to apply for, which may have an age bar. But then there are other scholarships which only you would be exclusively be able to apply for. For example, the Chevening Scholarship. The Chevening Scholarship is not open for you until you have some work experience. So I would suggest, if you have an academic fire within you, you should certainly be making that application. Many people don't apply thinking that this is not something we're going to get, or maybe we've already missed the bus. Maybe you missed the bus at a particular point in time, but the bus goes around and comes back for you. So you can certainly apply at any age group.
All right. So, like you mentioned about Rhodes, I remember my batchmates from NUJS, most of them were also applying, focusing only on Rhodes. Now, you've been the top 4 finalists for Rhodes, and could you share your journey of Rhodes as well as for Cambridge? I remember you were stuck at that point of time when you had to take the call between Cambridge and the official one which you received. So, how was your journey, and how did you take that decision?
So I think there was a question which I completely missed, and your question brings me to that. There was a question on a difference between, say, a Harvard LLM and an Oxford BCL. I will include Cambridge also into the picture and answer it. See, essentially, there is not much of a difference. So if you land yourself in that happy problem situation, what are happy problems in a master's application? A happy problem is when you have offers from each of the Ivy League universities. A happy problem is when you have more than one scholarship offers. So those are happy problems. Like, all of us would love to find ourselves in that problem situation. Now, how we go forward from there is that you need to understand. For example, for me, it was always about Professor Sandra Fredman and her articles, which really helped me make that choice. You need to understand your academic inclinations and then make that very hard choice with regard to what specifically would be most satisfying for those academic inclinations. Secondly, with regard to a US and a UK LLM difference, Harvard and Oxford. See, the courses in Harvard were probably more contemporary. They are more open-ended. You can weave your own thing out of it slightly more than how it would be in Oxford. For example, when we studied comparative constitutional law, or say comparative human rights at Oxford, we looked at a particular set of jurisdictions. It was India, South Africa, US, UK, Canada, sometimes Brazil, sometimes the EU. And then we used to, say, take up a particular topic like death penalty or affirmative action, and then see how this particular concept is being treated in each of these different jurisdictions. So this is how it was in Oxford. In Harvard, the system is slightly different. You don't have specific set courses or a staple diet of sorts. That could be more exciting and more enriching, and that's why it becomes a difficult choice. right? It becomes a difficult choice to choose among these options, and ultimately you choose whatever and you won't regret it, because your own experience is going to be so amazing that you will not be in a position to regret a particular choice you make. So this is with regard to the difference among these institutions. um, with regard to a choice, see, I was in a position where I applied on. So for me, the difficult decision was to apply only for Oxford, because I was so driven by what I was reading by Professor Fredman, and I had really started liking the idea of Oxford University. I did not make other applications to other universities, but yes, I did find myself in that happy problem situation with regard to scholarships. So the Rhodes, so I will tell you my scholarship journey, and I hope it really helps some of you, because it's a very difficult journey. You gain admission and then you're on the top of the world, and then you realize that, oh, you can find yourself in a situation where, because you may not get funding, you may have to miss out. So Rhodes becomes very, very important. And I was fortunate enough to land myself till the final round situation, till a situation where they had to choose only 2 or 3 people more. I think there were 2 rounds which I had cleared. But how it works is that there are some situations you can't help yourself with. So if in a scholarship interview session they go very random or they go hyper technical, if they ask you something which they expect you should certainly know and you don't know, it can be very demotivating. Similarly, maybe you get negative results from, say, a master's application you made to a particular university with a lot of effort, or to a scholarship application. The lesson is, don't quit, don't be down and out. If something like this happens, really, really challenge yourself and make a very strong effort for the next thing. So by the end of the journey, I did get offers from Commonwealth. I did clear a particular stage at INLACS. I did get an offer from Chevening. The reason I got an offer from Chevening was because I was having some work experience through an organization that I was working with in Dehradun, even when I was doing my law. And then I did get an offer from the Louis Dreyfus Weidenfeld Hoffmann Trust, and I made that choice for myself. But after the Rhodes result came out and I was not there for the final round, I did feel very disheartened. I felt as if life is coming to an end, and oh, what will happen now? And I know I can't afford it. But I'm very happy to share with you, friends, that when that journey, like when Oxford came to an end, I actually had a sizable corpus that I had managed to save from the stipend I was getting every month to pursue my course. And I could use that stipend amount to invite my family to Oxford, took them around, showed them Scotland and other places. They attended my convocation, and it was an all expenses trip which I bore on my own through my own stipend savings. So don't get too disappointed. Maybe success doesn't come in the first step, but if you stay at it, it does come eventually.
So shall we take the last question? It's already 1:06
Yeah, last
now.
round of questions, sure.
Yes. Pavni, unmuting you.
Hi, Abhijay sir and Sammanika ma'am. So I have a couple of questions. I've actually listed them down. So one is that, is Oxford more academic oriented as compared to other universities when we consider for LLM or MGR? And then if being a student, what all things do you suggest that, one can pursue in these days when we are comparatively having more time at our hands to enhance our CVs for our LLM applications, considering like, if I talk about myself, I wouldn't say that I'm coming from, top 5 or top 10 ranked students in my college. And secondly, what do you think of the level of competition for the 2021 batches for LLM, considering there will be so many students so many students who will be applying for 2021 the fresher batches, and plus so many of the existing students will have deferred their terms if the universities consider shifting their classes online, so there'll be, I think, many people who will defer their terms considering the COVID situation worldwide. So, like, I wasn't sure if I should be applying this year for 2021 batch, or should I, is it safer to go for 2022 class? And then, lastly, do you have any idea about the good dispute resolution LLMs in UK or US, maybe? If you can please suggest me the universities that I can look for.
Okay. Next question, Atif.
Yeah, good evening. So my question is, are scholarship provided for specific session, or a student can secure a scholarship and he has the choice of using it at a later time in future?
All right, Abhijay, I'm taking the last question because we have to wrap up latest by 1:30. Naveen, please go ahead.
Hello. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, there are like some particular universities in India which do not give high grade marks. So 70 or 72% may be the highest that a student scores at these universities. So being in a non-NLU college and getting such kind of marks, do you think this impacts on your CV, or do they consider these grades and marks, academic performance, etc.? Thank you.
All right. Just one more person because he's been raising his hands. Somebody with Realme 5S. I'm unmuting you because I don't know your name. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry for that username. I didn't figure it out earlier. Yeah, my question is regarding the statement of purpose application. So, as Abhijay sir mentioned, that there should be a balance of achievements in it as well. So, what would be your suggestion? What should be the right balance between achievements and your personal statement? Secondly, in the CV, what kind of achievements are they really looking for? Like, is it any specific kind of thing like mooting or debating or academic writings? And thirdly, I just want to know that what's the right time to start preparing for such applications and scholarships? Like, I'm a first year student, so what should be the proper time when I should really start working on it? Thank you. That's my question.
Abhijay, you can answer the questions.
Okay. So I think the first question was on how can we enhance our CVs in, say, during this time, and what could we expect from the level of competition. So during this time, you can of course say start with something as basic as trying to write for your local newspaper. You can try reading up about a particular area of law which may interest you, so that you can work on a research paper which you can get published at a good place. Most publications in India, sadly, are a humble jumble of cut, copy, paste exercises from, say, 20 or 30 sources. Sadly, the more the number of cut, copy, pastes, and we say that, oh wow, this is such a good paper. But this is not how it is in good academic institutions. What they want from you is not how well you cut, copy, paste. What they want from you is how well you extract the juice of what you read and pen it into your own thoughts. So this is exactly the kind of time you can use for reading up about things, reading as much as you can, and then say trying to extract the basic essence of it and use it in thoughtful and profound academic writing. And if you want to casually write, you can write for newspapers, you can write for some local journals or blogs, and keep a track of it. Maybe something which we casually or instinctively write, these things become interesting material for a deeper research. So this can be helpful. Another thing I can suggest for academic writing of this kind is that you can also work with, say, one of your teachers who you get along well with. What that does is, most teachers have experience of conferences and academic writing, etc. So they can really, really guide you. Maybe they will make you do all the hard work, but then that's a good thing. So they are also people who would be relatively free at this time of the year, so you can probably talk to them and work with them. With regard to the level of competition, see, now questions like these are up for grabs. Like, nobody can give you correct answers, and fundamentally you will realize that is it in our hand to control the level of competition, if it's high or if it's low? So it is not something which is very much in our hands to control. So therefore you shouldn't worry too much about it. Worry about the things and factors that are in your hand, which is your own profile, your own application, and how you make it. So this is something I can suggest on that question. With regard to scholarships being session wise, so no, not to my knowledge, though I can be wrong because I am not very sure about it. But I don't think there are session wise scholarships. See, please understand it from the point of view of the person or the institution that is funding you. They are funding you because they see potential in you. It's not an act of charity. So don't mistake it to be one. They fund you because they want you to do great things, and then they are keeping their share in all those great things that you will do, saying that, oh, that guy is doing great things, but he's doing great things because we funded him. So please know this. So I don't think session-wise scholarships would solve that problem for them, because that's far too less. And Oxford, for example, only has 3 sessions: Michaelmas, Hillary, and Trinity. So I don't think that there would be session-wise scholarships, because no postgraduate course is only for 1 session. Like, for example, the BCL is at least 3 sessions. So that is about it. Yes, with regard to universities who do not give you high marks. So that is indeed a very terrible situation, because generally Oxford, for example, looks at least a grade point of 8 if out of 10, or equivalent standards as it gets higher or lower or whatever. But if your university does not generally mark well, if it's following a conventional pattern, what you can do is, in your application form, mention it somewhere, mention it clearly, loud and clear, but don't do it, say, at every level. That becomes an exercise in desperation. So mention it that you are applying from a university which does not, for which this is the highest mark, and this is your profile. And that is why, say, there could be a situation that you might be the first applicant from your university. So that is such an exciting situation to be in. So what you should do is you should make it reflect very clearly, and you should let them know that this is the situation with you. And your profile, that is, it would really help if you would have a great publication, which could be that 1 or 2 publications or 3 publications at good forums, good conferences, etc. And somebody asked me about what is it that makes for a good profile with regard to the achievements, etc., and whether it's mooting or it's publications or something. See, ultimately it's an academic course, so they are looking, as I told you, they will be sniffing for academic things. So if you're in your first year or in your first few years of law school, I think this is a very good time for you to start preparing for your applications. Now, how is it that you can prepare? Please understand, these applications are made of various pillars. These pillars, for example, the CV. The CV is not just a document, it is who you are, what you have done. So therefore, you can use your CV building to great extent in these formative years. You can really, really work hard and add value to your CV. You can find out your areas of interest. You can read up. So even if you're casually reading, if you're doing something which can be helpful towards making your CV, you are actually doing something which will help you get to one of these universities. So you can use your time in something like this. And with regard to what is it that they are looking for? So see, there's no straight answer to this. There is a very strong mooting culture in most of our universities. We almost compulsively impose it on students that, oh, we all need to moot, because we all need to moot. That is how it becomes. We all need to publish because we just need to publish. So that we all need to intern. We need to intern as much as possible. So that is not like, all these statements are not true. Like, what matters is quality. that doesn't mean that if you don't get one of these quality moots, you cannot make it to these universities. I can tell you, I did not have any moot in my profile, nothing on the moot court front. I had very bad internships with at least the corporate law firms, or say even with the policy tank. Of course, I had worked with Mr. MC Mehta, but that was something, that is why I was always having a litigation kind of a profile, and was clear in my mind that I would want to come back and litigate here. So find out what you are best at, and that is the foot you have to keep strongly and most forward in such applications. That becomes very important. With regard to dispute resolution LLMs, see, I do have some institutions on the top of my mind, but I wouldn't want to very casually suggest it, because I did not do a dispute resolution LLM. So I would not answer that question. I would suggest you to look it up online. If I can help you connect, and I'm sure the team at LawSeco also can help you connect with individuals who've actually done dispute resolution LLMs, and they can be in a very good position to answer that question. My BCL degree was in comparative and international law. So my basic work was on affirmative action, comparative affirmative action in different countries. I was comparing South Africa with India and other countries. So that was largely what the kind of work I was doing, and that is largely the kind of learning I brought back with me to India. And with regard to your achievements question, see, the CV has to have some achievements, in the sense that you have to show to the evaluator that this is not just any other profile, that you have worked hard towards something, and because you have achieved that something, you deserve this admission. So, and please don't go with any kind of a view from anyone who would say, oh, this is an absolute right and this is an absolute wrong. Like, it doesn't work this way. Ultimately, there's a human being who's evaluating her application. Life can be unfair, it can be very subjective, but you just need to ensure that you keep your best foot forward, you try very hard, you try honestly, and things can work out. Back to you, Sammanika.
There are so many hands which have been raised. Let's take one last question.
I would suggest you can ask all of them, if they can be very short with their questions. I'll try to wrap up as soon as possible.
Unmuting you, Vanaj.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you, sir, for the session. I have a very simple question, sir. After your LLM, you are a first generation litigator, a position I would also hopefully find myself in. So how exactly has this LLM helped you in litigation? And that would end my question. Thank you.
All right. Next is Kushagra.
Good afternoon, sir. My question is, if we're choosing out of those 40 courses, should we align our internships in that way? One. And secondly, what should our co-curricular activities be? Because I believe they also see what you are holistically as a person. And that is something that we haven't discussed as of yet. I thank you for addressing my questions whenever you do.
All right. Next is, who else hasn't? Shrey, you have some query?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'll keep my questions short. I have a couple of questions. My first one being, it's a more personal question. So I had an internship with a former judge in the AP High Court, but he completed his service. Now he's a retired judge. He's taking arbitration. So would you suggest that getting a recommendation letter from him would be right now, because he's not a serving judge in the High Court, would that be beneficial for me? My second question, sir, is with regard to specialization. A lot of universities I have seen, they allow us to go to the university within the first 1 week, they allow us to attend a few introductory programs and then to decide which area of which programs we can opt for. So keeping that in mind, would my SOP, which is currently directed at a particular program, and my SOP, when I draft it, I will keep certain ideas in mind. But if I happen to go to the university and then change my mind, would Oxford in specific allow for it? Is there something you would know about this particular aspect? My third very specific query, sir, is with regard to the BCL program that you have completed. Initially, when I was just browsing through various LLM programs, I was under the impression that BCL is something like a substitute for a bachelor's degree for a substitute in a civil law country. But in the beginning of your lecture, in the beginning of your explanation, you try to throw some light upon it. I would request you to just elaborate a little more on how BCL is different, and would that be very beneficial for someone with a more specific, with a general interest in, I would say, human rights? These would be my queries. Thank you so much.
Abhijay, you can start answering now.
Okay. So with regard to the first question on whether this helps in litigation, I would say it does, and it has really helped me in litigation. For example, I read for the comparative human rights, comparative equality law, and for example, there was this concept called dialogic review, and that was taught to me by Professor Sandra Fredman. And I came back here. I was stuck up with a very typical constitutional law case at the High Court of Uttarakhand in Nainital. I was facing the Chief Justice, who was slightly conservative. He believed that it is not for the judiciary at all to issue any kinds of directions to the executive in case they choose not to frame regulations, or if the legislature chooses not to enact a law. And then I remembered that, oh, I learned about this concept called the dialogic review, which would mean that different institutions and arms of the state are in a kind of dialogue with one another, and therefore, if there is no disputed question of fact, then it is not improper for the courts to come in and save what we call constitutional morality, or which Ronald Dawkins called was something which is morally significant. Now, when I was trying to argue these matters in court, of course, there were lawyers who felt this was Greek and Latin, and they laughed at it. They were like, what is this talk all about? Because this is not the Delhi or Bombay High Court. This was the Uttarakhand High Court. But I was very happy to see that it had the desired impact. And in the judgment that was finally pronounced, in the case of Vipul Jain versus State of Uttarakhand, you can actually read it up. It was a good judgment, and it valued all these kinds of creative suggestions and arguments. So it was of use, of actual substantive use, and more so, it is not as if when you come from such a university, you don't get entitled to some kind of privilege. So judges have asked me, for example, that where have you done your master's from? And you have a good answer to give them. So it helps. Of course, it then, your small mistakes can cause your hanging, etc. But it's a good thing to say. It's a different thing to say, and I don't know why, but specifically in India, it gives you a kind of a halo, which people would then look at you a different way. So I would say master's opportunities really help with litigation. This is something which I can say from my own practical experience. The second question was on co-curricular activities. Yes, I would agree with the person who asked this question. I wish we could have discussed it more. See, co-curricular activities are very important. Now, co-curricular activities are those, of course, as all of you would understand, which are in addition to your conventional curriculum. They make a big difference, and they should be aligned towards the particular area of law you want to pursue for your master's. So when we talk about all of these things, conferences, notes, etc., they do fall in that bracket. What you can also do is that really look up some of the particular important conferences that are coming up in your areas of interest, and write for them, apply for them, attend those sessions. it can be helpful. It is very helpful. Like I would say co-curriculars are as important as your grades, because maybe your grades can help you clear the first step, but what happens thereafter will be a lot of people who have cleared that step, and then they are looking at things that differentiate a profile A from profile B, and that inadvertently tends to be your co-curriculars. So they're important. Build on it through your 5 years. Write, read. I know this is all conventional, but it really helps. With regard to the AP High Court recommendation question, yes, it will make a big difference if he can recommend you, and it does not make a big difference if he is retired. It has to be an individual who knows you, who can vouch for your kind of work or for who you are, etc. So if he's retired, that's the way of life. Many people retire, and that is something which is known to people sitting at these universities who are going to evaluate your profile. With regard to the specific question on SOP and whether it should be directed towards the 40 courses, I think one of the earlier questions also on internships was that whether the internships should be directed towards these 40 courses or a few of these 40 courses. Yes, they should be directed towards these courses. But see, 40 courses, if you read those 40 courses of the BCL, they're all over. It deals with almost every existing branch of law. So you can't direct yourself in so many directions. If you will, then you will probably become ineligible for applying for a specific master's degree. So you need to understand that out of those 40 courses, you have to cut it short to say 10 or 15. Maximum, I would say probably 10 actually, not even 15, which you would really want to pursue. Like one of 4 of these 10 you would want to pursue for your BCL at Oxford. And in those 10 subjects that you finalize for yourself, you can try to direct your internships and your profile towards that. When I say this, sniff your CV to see a connection between your CV and your SOP, I do mean that they will be sniffing your CV all over. So it will not just be your grades or your curriculum or your co-curricular performance. It would also be your internships and all those things. So yes, you can direct them accordingly. And with regard to the specific question on the BCL and human rights, comparative human rights is an absolutely fascinating subject which can help you go miles with human rights. I know, Tarun Bhai Khaitan or Professor Fredman I was talking about, or this Professor Nicholas. There are some very bright teachers at Oxford who are doing some path-breaking work in academic writing in these fields. So I can certainly tell you that the CHR course, the equality law course are really courses worth it. And I will just, want to conclude by saying that all of you should look at your profiles honestly, try to work on them. But if you're thinking in your own evaluation that you're somewhere around the borderline between applying and not applying, definitely apply. Like don't become the evaluator automatically. Like let them do their job. Your job as an applicant is to apply, and you should apply. And I wish all of you the very best. And I'm sure, regardless of what happens to your application form, you all will do very well in life if you are true to your passion and true to your goals.
Thank you so much, Abhijay. That was an extremely informative session. And the last thing which you said was the same thing I had said to some of the students whom I spoke in last couple of days. Anyways, taking this opportunity to request you for another slot where we can discuss about your litigation journey and how you, being the first generation lawyer, have managed to get good clients at Uttarakhand High Court, and why you chose Uttarakhand High Court over Delhi High Court or any other High Court. So will you be available anytime soon?
Yes, certainly, Sammanika. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us. The recorded version will be uploaded on YouTube. And for non-law seeker students, if you think you require any counseling session, you can visit our website lawseeker.com. There you can request for a counseling session with the experts. Abhijay, how can the audience contact you? Because on YouTube they are writing that they want to get in touch with you. Are you on LinkedIn now?
I am not on LinkedIn yet. I will try to come very soon, but you can always contact me on Facebook, or you
Okay.
can drop me an email, whatever.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Abhijay, for your time.
Thank you. Bye bye. Stay safe.